write it down?
We can have that.
And there's the slim chance we might be doing it on Kazu's thing, so that's on the big screen.
No, I don't even know what Kazu is doing. Is it Kazu or Kazu? Okay, well, we'll just.
Hey, we're just waiting for 2 more people. It'll just be a minute. Is this going out to the internets right now?
Oh,
We'll just be 2 minutes because we're waiting for 2 people.
well, we'll start without them in a second.
Sure.
I mean, you can stand up if you want.
Hey, now we're just waiting for 1 person.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to start. And we'll just have a little techno hookup thing in the middle.
Go ahead and start.
Hi, my name is Meryl Jaffe. I'm an educator with a PhD in educational and school psychology. I work for Hopkins University Center for Talented Youth. I am the author of Using Content Area Graphic Texts for Learning and author of Raising a Reader. I also write a featured column for Comic Book Legal Defense Fund called Using Graphic Novels in Education. First, I want to thank you guys for joining us, and I want to thank the staff from Emerald City Comic Con for helping us out, and from FlipON. Thank you. And I also want to thank my panelists for joining me. Thank you very much. We have Jimmy Gownley, Kazu Kibiushi, Nathan Hale, and Royden Lepp, and hopefully Jeff Smith will be joining us any minute. For the next 40 minutes, we'll be talking about how comic books and graphic novels can help raise readers in and out of the classroom. But first, I want to just spend a few minutes talking about the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund and its Raising a Reader initiative. CBLDF is a sponsor of Kids' Right to Read project, which offers support, education, and advocacy to people facing book challenges or bans, and it engages in local local activists in promoting the freedom to read. CBLDF has also Raising a Reader initiative, and we have this free booklet all about how graphic novels can help you either as parents or teachers raise readers. It's free. You can come pick a copy up at the end of the panel. We also have you can also pick them up at the booth, or if you're interested, you can always download them from your computer at www.cbldf.org. Okay. Oh, also, I just want to say that the initiative for Raising a Reader was made possible by a generous grant from the Gaiman Foundation. So now I'm going to introduce our panel. Actually, I'm just going to have them introduce themselves. Jimmy, you want to?
Sure, I'm Jimmy Gownley. I'm the creator of a graphic novel series called Amelia Rules, which ran from 2001 to 2012. I have a relative here, apparently. That's nice. And my new book is called The Dumbest Idea Ever, which is not about this panel, but is in fact about my decision to become a cartoonist when I was just 15, and it's brand new from Scholastic Books.
Hi, I'm Kazu Kibiushi. I'm the author of a book called Amulet. It's a graphic novel for Scholastic Graphics. I also recently painted the new 15th anniversary edition covers for Harry Potter, and I also put together an anthology called Explorer. Prior to that, I also put together an anthology called Flight, and did a book called Daisy Cutter and a comic strip called Copper.
My name is Nathan Hale. I'm the illustrator of a book called Rapunzel's Revenge and its sequel, Calamity Jack. I'm working on a series right now of American history comics called the Hazardous Tales, about cool and gross stories from American history. These came out about 2 years ago from Amulet, not Kazu's Amulet, but the publisher who's called Amulet, who you actually now work for too, right?
What's that?
You're doing work for Amulet, but not Amulet.
But not Amulet.
But for Amulet.
Exactly.
Wait. Never mind.
I want to hear more about this Harry Potter thing. It sounds interesting.
Amulet Books is the ones who do the Wimpy Kid. So I'm publishing these true stories of nonfiction with lots of jokes packed in about American history. And the first book, to our surprise, climbed to the New York Times bestseller list in hardcover last week. So I'd like to thank the other members of the panel for not putting the books out in hardcover so that I could get on that list. But yeah, my name is Nathan Hale. Hazardous Tales is my series.
Well, my book is hardcover, so you beat me. Yeah, so. My name is Royden Lepp. I'm creator of children's books and graphic novels. My latest series is called Rust. It's from Archaea, which is also Boom, and it's a 4-volume hardcover series that you can pick up at the Boom booth or at my table.
And if Jeff Smith were here, he would just like to point out that he has more money than all of us combined.
Thank you. I'm going to just stand up so I can see you guys as I ask you some questions. I have to start by saying that I love graphic novels. I advocate for graphic novels in schools, homes, and libraries. But I was the parent and the teacher who used to say, don't even think about bringing that stuff into my classroom or my home. And to my defense, I'd like to think that I'm a little bit older, and when I was doing this, the selection and availability was more limited than it is today. But still, my kids had to sit me down and do an intervention, and they showed me that I was totally wrong. But what I wanted to do, and what I wanted to ask you guys to begin the panel with, is can you talk a little bit about your experiences dealing with informal challenges like educating reluctant teachers, librarians, parents, and the like about the value of reading comics?
It's actually funny you should ask that, because in my new book from Scholastic, The Dumbest Idea Ever, I talk about that very thing. When I was in 8th grade, there was a moment where a teacher gave us an independent reading period, 45 minutes or whatever, because she had to get some stuff together. I pulled out a copy of an ElfQuest graphic novel, which I thought was fantastic. She thought it was less than fantastic, and told me there was no place for that kind of junk in class. And I was at the time pretty obsequious and pretty interested in being just seen as a good kid that got good grades. And I was going to let it pass, but there was something about it that really just stuck in my craw. And I stood up for myself and I said, no, I think you're wrong. I don't think this is just great for a comic book. I think this is great. And she said to me, well, if you're so smart about it, why don't you do an oral presentation? We're all giving out oral presentations next week. Yours has to be about why comics are worthwhile to be read in the classroom. It was a great gift for me in some ways. What I didn't know is that I would be giving that presentation for the rest of my life. But it was really interesting because I got a fantastic grade, and she said it was well written, it was well presented, it was thoroughly researched, and she wasn't changing her policy anyway. So that was also a life lesson on top of just my first moment to really stand up for comics.
Well, I was actually born in. Do you guys hear that? Is that okay? Okay. I was actually born in Tokyo, Japan. So I came here when I was about 3 years old, Is there no, am I just, I'll just project, it's fine. I don't think the mic's on. My mic's not on. It is? Oh, okay. But I was born in Tokyo, and I had to learn a second language when I was learning my first at about 3 years old. So when I came to the States, and my mom was just too busy work. She was a single mom, and we're trying to raise 2 kids, and she was like 25, 26. She was really young, and I didn't really see her all that much. I was in daycare, or I was with my grandma who spoke Japanese, and so I actually leaned on comics to teach me to, and Jeff.
Welcome,
I was
Jeff Smith, everyone.
That's Jeff Smith. But I picked up a copy of Mad Magazine and read RoboSlop by Mort Drucker, and that's how I found out about. I was trying to figure out what the RoboCop movie posters were all about, and I just read RoboSlop, and that's how I associated RoboCop with RoboSlop, and that's how I figured out what was going on in the world. That, and I would read Garfield, and that was my entry into America, and so for me, drawing books that are teaching kids to read, whether they're learning from another language into English, or they're just reading for the first time, it makes sense to me that's why my books probably resonate in that regard, because that's where I came from originally at about 3 or 4 years old.
When I started doing graphic novels, which was probably more recently than you guys, my first one came out in 2008. There were still 1 or 2 teachers and librarians that kind of turned their nose up at it. But just in the past, however many years it's been, since 2008, I think I've seen maybe 2. But what I've seen a lot of are teachers coming up to me and saying, I didn't like comics, but little Timmy, that's always the name of the kid, Timmy never picked up a book, but he got your book and he just carried it around, and now he reads. And I'm like, yeah, that's my job, teaching Timmys how to read. But what I've found in doing history comics is that you can pack so much information into a picture that when kids are just reading about the Boston Tea Party or the Battle of Bunker Hill, for example, it's just an abstract. It's just words, and they're super boring words. But if there's a picture of the hill, and you can see the little cannons on it, and you can see the little arrows going down to the Boston Harbor where the cannons can shoot, suddenly it becomes more realistic. And I've noticed that teachers really glom onto that, and they love the idea that kids are just absorbing this information, not just through words, but through images too.
Yeah, my experience is kind of like yours. I'm a little bit late to the game getting into comics. So when I go to schools and I talk to kids and I talk to teachers, they already have like huge graphic novel sections in their libraries, and they're labeled by genre or how difficult they are to read. That's the kind of stuff I did not have growing up. I never got kicked out of class for reading comics, but it's not like we could check them out of the library. And now I go and I talk to kids about comics and reading pictures instead of reading words, and how important it is to be visually literate and be able to read icons and poses and facial expressions. And all that stuff is already there. They were hitting the ground running in a way that I didn't get to when I was young. So I feel like I haven't had to fight the battles that probably some other people have had to do to to get their books into a library so that kids can read them. So I'm riding coattails.
And I'll just interrupt to introduce our esteemed panelist, Jeff Smith, who is author, cartoonist of Bone graphic novels, which won numerous awards around the world, including 2 NCS Division Awards for Best Comic, 10 Eisner Awards, 11 Harvey Awards, and Alf Art for Best Foreign Book in, thank you.
Angoulême.
Merci beaucoup. France, as well as awards in Spain, Germany, and Italy, before being chosen to launch the first graphic novel imprint for children by Scholastic in 2005. In September of 2013, Smith released his most recent graphic novel, a hard-boiled science fiction epic titled Razzle. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Perfect.
Great. Also that fall, a new webcomic was launched about the first human to live in Africa 2 million years ago called Tukey Save the Humans at Boneville.com, and Smith was guest editor of the Best American Comic 2013. Bone, Razzle, and Best American Comics 2013 were New York Times bestsellers. Thanks. And we're just to fill you in, we're just talking about, I asked the panelists to talk about your experiences dealing with informal challenges from educators who used to be like me, or are still like me, or the way I used to be, reluctant to...
I think we were about to charge you right there.
Yes.
If you're still that way.
Yeah. No.
When I was a kid, I grew up in the 60s and a little bit, and I was still in high school in the 70s. And definitely at that time, comics were still considered cheap crap for children, and they had no value. And in fact, not only did they have no value, they actually caused illiteracy. Like if you read comics, they made you stupid. But I knew that. Even when I was a kid, I knew that was wrong because I learned to read because of comics. I read, little Peanuts paperbacks when I was a kid. And, when my dad wasn't around to read them to me, I still had to figure out what's Snoopy saying. I had to figure it out. I had to do it. So I taught myself to read from comics, and I knew that they operated the same way a book does. I mean, you start at the top and you start at the top, read left to right, work your way down, just like sentences on a page. The only difference is, I heard these guys saying, there's story information in the images. And I actually think that's kind of a more sophisticated level of comprehension. You have to use both sides of your brain. And maybe that's why comics have always been considered somewhat subversive and dangerous, because when you have both sides of your brains working at the same time, stuff slips into your id, And comics always have been a little bit. Well, who mentioned Mad Magazine? Was it you, Kazu?
Yeah.
Mad Magazine that was what fed me as a kid. That was the only place I could see reality or truth, or maybe Peanuts. Because, if you watched Bewitched, it was silly and stupid, and why would she stay with that guy, She's a witch, she can do anything, she's magic. Gilligan's Island, even when I was a kid, TV was just so silly, and commercials were unbearable. But I could read Mad Magazine, and they would explain why Madison Avenue ad men were trying to talk people into buying Scope mouthwash and making them feel bad about it. Or in Peanuts, you would actually see the inner life and pain of children on the playground. Charlie Brown, his stomach hurt, and that was real. That was real life to me, and you didn't see that anywhere else. So comics were the only thing that was real that I experienced growing up.
Yeah, I think it's the medium the reading medium that most closely represents life, because life is words and images, and you're decoding them at the same time constantly. And I don't know if you've had this experience when Bone started out, which was in the early 90s, but there was a time when people didn't know how to read comic books. It was like if you were a new person to the form, you had to have someone explain to you how to read comics. I don't think that happens anymore, and I think it's in part because of the internet. The internet is all words and pictures coming at you simultaneously that you have to decode. And I found that over the last 10 years, that just doesn't happen where someone says, well, how do I read one of these things? But that was fairly common, I think, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah. I also going to piggyback on both of you with the next question, or segue into the next question, which is after I was exposed to the really awesome selection of graphic novels that are available for kids of all ages right now. Now, I realized as an educator and a psychologist that the graphic novels aren't just great for helping either acquire or develop reading skills, but they are great for understanding sequencing skills, beginning, middle, end, and how to organize something, because you see on each page how everything is organized. And then there's critical thinking, which Jeff, you touched on. You know, it's like not only do you have to read and comprehend the text, the language, but there's so much more information in the images that you not only have to construct by taking time and slowing down and looking at the images, but you have to integrate the information from the images with the information from the text, which is a form of critical thinking. And then you also have, graphic novels are wonderful in terms of helping kids slow down sometimes and focus, which for many is an issue, because you have to stop and slow down and look at the details in the images as well as the text. And then you have the visual and the verbal pairing, which helps with memory. So I know this as an educator, but I'm curious from you guys, if you're going to schools and talking with so many people on your travels and promoting your really awesome works, what are some of the success stories that you've heard from parents and educators about their kids or students using comics? And was there anything surprising to you?
Well, let's see. I guess I'll start. I mean, I do hear from a lot of teachers and parents, often from parents of dyslexic children, that my books are often used to get them. Well, here's the thing about the oh, whoa. Sorry, guys. Well, you guys can look at these if you're bored. So these are just editorial cartoons for my college paper.
Why would you be bored?
Yeah. But oh man, now I'm like, I haven't slept for several days. By the way, I just finished Amulet 6 2 days ago. And it was a sequence of a couple of all-nighters, you know, to make sure that I wasn't working while I was coming here, and so I haven't slept. And then the kids have been up all night, so excuse me. But as far as comics being used to teach kids to read or get kids to love to read, I think that's the key. It's not so much that it's teaching them to read; it's making them realize that reading, equals experiencing a good story. I think everyone just wants to experience a good story or hear interesting information. I think that just comes naturally. You just want to do that, whether you're watching a movie or playing a game or reading a comic or reading a book. I just think a lot of times kids who have low-level reading comprehension are afraid to tell somebody that they don't understand what they're looking at. And so my job now, I realize, is to get them to show them that books have, through books, you'll have access to fun. And because I had fun reading literature in high school. I just had a lot of fun reading Steinbeck and Hemingway. I had a blast reading it, and I was surprised because I just thought it was supposed to be boring, but I was so into it. And obviously Jeff loves classic literature as well, with Moby Dick. And I think that's what got me interested in writing my comics, because for a long time ago I used to think that I was too dumb to write, that I was the artist kid because no one considered me the writer kid, and I started working on my storytelling skills because I fell in love with books.
I did a week-long school visit in a Texas school where every kid in the school had to do a big report at the end of the year about a historical character. And they brought me in for the first week, and to kick the whole thing off, every kid in the school had to draw a comic about their historical character. How many of you kids like to draw comics? How many of you that are readers like to draw your own comics too? These kids were not happy to draw comics. They were like, ugh, this was a private school. They were all, it was in Texas, all their parents were oil millionaires. They were not comic drawing kids. They didn't want to do it. I said, look, it doesn't matter how they look, just make little stick people and draw your story out. And after we did it, I got a weird, after the week went by and I'd done these classes with every student, I thought, boy, that was a horrible failure. I hope they don't call me back. And a week later, I got an email from the school librarian, and she said that was the fastest they had ever jumped into a report before, after they finished the comics. They didn't want to draw the comics, but after the comic was finished, they jumped into the report feeling like they knew the subject matter inside and out because they'd drawn a little character. They'd drawn, like a kid had to draw Yuri Gagarin, I think, the first man in space, the Russian guy. So he drew a little Russian guy, and he started to bond with his little historical character, and he put him in the space capsule and shot him up into space, and he'd already visualized it. So taking that leap from just writing the hard data about it was super easy for him.
And,
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I add something? I don't know about you guys, but right now when I read anything, I feel like what I'm doing is I'm doing research. So I think that, and it's fun research. Like it's not, just. I think when people think homework, it's that they're being forced to research something that they don't think there's any application for. So if you understand that there is a reason for the application of that information, I think they would naturally get into it.
Yeah. The thing I've noticed about graphic novel readers is they become graphic novel creators. Like I see a lot of kids who love reading novels, but they're not, some of them are going home and typing out a novel, but the readers I talk to in school, the 3rd and 4th, 5th graders, they love graphic novels, and then they say, hey, check out this notebook, and they flip it open, and it's full of little comics.
Yeah, the coolest thing I've heard from fans of my book Rust is parents who come up and they say, oh man, my kid loves your book because it's so big and heavy. And they get through it. I've got 20 pages with no text. I just like to tell stories with the images alone. So they're reading the story by reading the images, and they get the story and they love it and they finish it and they feel like they just finished this big novel because it's this big substantial book. And part of that's just the printing, but it's they're learning how to read the images and they get the story, and they still hit these points where they have to read the text and the dialogue and translate the compositions that are going on, but that's been kind of cool to hear parents say they felt like a kind of a victory when they were done your book. That was cool.
And I have the same stories that these guys have all told. Where even today, I probably had a dozen parents or librarians come up to me and say that reluctant readers or dyslexic students or their kids read the books and had never read anything before and devoured the graphic novels and have moved on to other prose works and stuff like that. Why that is, I have absolutely no idea, other than how awesome comics are. But I really, obviously there's some element of the visual stuff and how they can see what a character's thinking literally. It might help, but I really don't understand it, and it's just icing on the cake for me. I don't care.
I'm curious, Jimmy. After you've told me that you went back to your school and you're promoting the new book, Dumbest Idea Ever.
Yep.
Is a teacher who asked you to do that presentation, is she still teaching?
No, she died penniless and alone in shame. And but I visited her gravesite, and
Did you leave comics?
yeah,
Did you draw?
yeah. No, I don't know what happened to her, and
If she had used them after anywhere.
Oh, trust me, she did not. No, she was set in her ways. And one of the things, actually, just as a little side, doing a memoir like that, I sort of felt bad because she's not a bad person. She was actually a pretty good teacher in a lot of ways. The moment where her story intersected my story happened to be a thing where she was wrong. And so I actually changed. There was one of 2 instances in the entire book where I changed someone's name because I didn't think it was fair to say, look at this woman, all she was an anti-comic bigot, and we should all laugh at her 20 years in the future. I'm sure she was fine in a lot of other ways. But I have heard from other people who, I started doing library conferences back in 2004, 2003, something like that. And there was a lot of anti-comics at the time. Librarians were the first group to pick it up and go, no, these aren't just good for reluctant readers, these are good in general. But there was still an element of people that were against it then. And I've had those people come back later and say, you know what, they may never be my cup of tea, they're not my bag, but I see what you were saying, and they've softened their stance on them. Most people have, really.
Okay, I have a whole bunch of other questions, but I'm going to skip ahead because I'll leave the rest of the questions up to you guys. But before we do that, I wanted to just go through the panel and ask you guys to recommend there are so many graphic novels now that are available for kids. what are ask you what some of your favorites are for the different age groups, and then do a little drawing exercise, and then we'll open it up to questions to you. So given the large selection of comics that are available, let's start with the younger kids. What are your favorite comics that either you love, that you would recommend for elementary level kids?
Well, I think you should start and finish with the books by the five of us, certainly. And then go back and reread those again.
Yeah.
Someone else can start.
Well, I would agree. I would agree.
Whenever I visit a library, my favorite thing to see in the kids area is a graphic novel section, like a dedicated graphic novel section. So if your library doesn't have it, like if you have to go look in regular books to find the graphic novels, go yell at a librarian and say, I want a graphic novel shelf, I want it low to the ground, close to the door, make it happen, because I know a lot of readers, when they go to that shelf, they'll just work their way through it. If it's on that shelf, they will read it.
And then biter. Biter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just good advice in general, I think. Just
I'm going to recommend two. One probably most people have heard of if you're here and you read comics at all. Owly is a great book for kids, for adults, for everybody. It's such a great way to read stories. I love Owly. And the second one, which is lesser known, called The Reason for Dragons. A great book for kids, all ages. I loved it as well. It's a one-shot. You don't have to get invested. And it's just a great story about family and dragons.
Okay.
Favorite of mine is Beware of Giants
Oh, that's, yeah.
by Rafael Rosado, and I can't remember the name of the guy who wrote it right off the top of my head. I'm blanking. But there's quite a few good ones. I'm enjoying the fact that while we're doing this panel, there's a kid up here reading The Great Calories.
Well, yeah,
He's bored and he's
bored,
reading
so
a
he's
graphic
actually
novel.
reading. I know, I thought that was great.
Well, we also have to mention Raina Telgemeier, and I think her
Oh, yeah,
her works
Smile.
have had a massive impact.
Oh, and that's been on like the New York Times bestsellers list for what, like 2 years? Just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And actually, just for slightly older kids, maybe 10 and up, I think Zot by Scott McCloud. There's one collection of his black and white issues called The Earth Stories, and I think they were brilliant. They were like really the first attempt for someone to do real YA fiction in a comic book format. And
I just wanted to, we'll get to that age group in a minute. I just
Oh,
also want-
Giants Beware. That's the name of it. Not Beware of Giants. Giants Beware. That's the name of the one.
It's excellent. There's also like, for girls, Zeta Space Girl is a wonderful book for readers of all ages, but also younger readers. Very empowering book about this girl who has to rescue her friend who gets zapped because she found this button and she wanted to push it and he didn't, but he got zapped and sucked into an alternate universe, and it's just a wonderfully empowering book for girls, for younger readers. So let's talk about middle school.
I would say Zot by Scott McCloud, which
Well, how about Understanding Comics as well?
that's great.
I'm not sure that's middle
Because-
school. Well, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I read that early high school. and
That's
it-
high school. I'm
yeah.
talking about middle school.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, stick with the program, man.
I can't. It's hard for me to make the distinctions because, like, I always felt like kids read up, because when I was in middle school, I was reading Michael Crichton,
Which
because
also-
I just wanted to read about dinosaurs.
Yeah, but you had fun reading Steinbeck, so and
Well,
Garfield.
I didn't have fun reading Steinbeck until high school. I thought all that was boring until I read it, and I thought I read Cannery Row, and I realized that somebody was painting in a book. And then once I saw that, I read The Old Man and the Sea, and I thought this is also another painting in a book, and it was amazing. So I kept looking for books like that.
Which also brings up the point that there are all kinds of readers at all kinds of levels and all kinds of ages. And it's important to understand that as teachers, as parents, as librarians. And maybe before we get into the drawing thing, we'll talk about where to look for other recommendations. But middle school, anyone else with middle school books?
I might mention Jeff Lemire as a creator. He's got some pretty complex, moody stories that I still think I don't know what category they'd be. I think they're good for everybody, but for the most part, anyway, I haven't read all of his books. But like Underwater Welder was really cool, dark and creepy, and I like the kinds of stories that he tells. I think middle school would like it.
We moved ahead too fast from kids' books. When I was walking around the show floor, I saw Don Rosa was out there. He was just sitting there. I was blown away. If your kids haven't read the DuckTales books, all of the Uncle Scrooge adventures. Fantagraphics right now is putting out these really cool hardcover books of the early duck cartoons from Disney, and they're great. My kids just destroy them, which makes me mad because they go out of print pretty quick. But they're from the 40s and 50s, and they're Uncle Scrooge and Huey, Dewey, and Louie and Donald going on adventures. They're timeless. I was really surprised at how well, when I first started collecting them again, how just super readable they are. They're great. The other thing that you need to get while it's available is the big slipcase Nausicaa in the Valley of the Wind by Hayao Miyazaki. It's going to be worth 10 times as much any minute when it goes out of print. But they're big, really.
Wait,
beefy.
who's doing? I want that. Where's
It's a Viz-
who's
it's
putting
Viz.
that
It's
out?
Viz hardcover, 2-volume in a big.
Is it here?
slipcase.
Is Viz here?
Somebody's probably got one somewhere, but it's only like
Is it on Amazon?
it's only like $39 too. You gotta
If there's only like 2 left, don't anybody else get one.
Free shipping if you sign up for Prime.
Well, also Doug Tenable. You know, I think Doug's books are
Oh, yeah,
great.
yeah.
I think I actually think Cardboard is one of the best
Absolutely.
best new graphic novels made. That one's I think completely underrated. I think it's sort of underrated. I think kids do find it though. But Cardboard is a really great single volume story.
You know, the one thing that this generation has that is really unique is that not only is there this amazing breadth of new material that's coming out daily, but you have access to all the stuff from the past. I mean, those Uncle Scrooge books and stuff were an impossibility for me to find as a kid. It would have hunt back issue bins in far-flung comic shops, and now you can buy them in hardcovers and trade paperbacks.
Oh, complete runs of Peanuts, Pogo,
Yeah.
Floyd Gottfriedson's Mickey Mouse. The
Mouse.
original Mickey Mouse, who was not a corporate whore. It was Mickey, who was like this little scamp, who was like he was
The best
He was
Indiana
clever
Jones
and
movies
smart, and
ever.
and he would trick and he would outthink his enemies. It's Floyd Gottfriedson's Mickey Mouse, so you can get that from Fantagraphics, and they're brilliant. I read them. I found them. God, I mean, yeah. To your point, when I wanted to like read the old comics, I used to have to go to like the stacks at Ohio State when I was in college, and I would go through the microfiche. And I read every daily page, and I read all the Dick Tracy's, I read all the Little Abner, I read all the Thimble Theater starring Popeye by Seagar. I read Floyd Gottfriedson's Mickey Mouse. And I used to try to print them out. It was like a dime a page. Oh man, it was expensive. But now you can get all these books in pristine shape, and these comics are still great for kids. All of them. Because they were in the daily paper at the time.
Yeah.
Any, quickly, because I want to try to get to a drawing thing and questions.
I'm hoping we can not have time for the drawing thing, so let's just keep going here.
We can not do the drawing.
Meryl's very flexible.
Okay. Suggestions for older readers. Did we do that already?
I think Zot's good. I think.
I'm a big fan of Kate Beaton's Hark a Vagrant. It's fantastic and super funny. It's like history jokes or jokes on pop culture figures. Really good.
That's it?
And thank you. Good night.
Yeah. Oh, that was great. Okay.
Well, when you grow up, you could read Love and Rockets. I think that's one of the all-time great things in the universe that has been created ever. But that's
Hear,
yeah.
Okay, we're going to do a little drawing challenge just to show you guys some of the things that are involved in creating comics, graphic novels, some of the skills and questions and everything else. And Jimmy's going to
Skills.
help me spearhead this. So Jimmy, why don't you?
Okay, I'm going to stand up. We'll see if this works.
Oh, while you're doing that, while you're getting
While I'm
ready,
standing up.
and I just wanted you guys to just take 2 minutes and just tell us what's coming out, what's new from your angles, what's coming out, what you want
I'm
to
going to sit down.
You think I take too long?
What's new?
Okay. What's new? I just finished Amulet 6, so that's coming out August 27th. And I know there's a long wait, but I had a lot of other stuff that was going on in my life, and then everything's back on track. So I'm already about I'd probably say about 60 pages into the roughs of Amulet 7 as well. I also I'm just about to finish Explorer 3. And yeah, what else? I guess that's it. And the Harry Potter covers came out in the fall, and they're available now.
The Harry Potter covers are awesome. Have you seen them? He repainted all the Harry Potter books, and there's like a box set of all of them, and the box set is like Hogwarts or something, right?
Yeah, it's
It's
Hogsmeade.
really amazing. It's amazing. Sorry, I'm a Kazu fan. Sorry.
I'm a Jeff fan. Huge Jeff fan.
This year is 2014, which marks the 100th anniversary of the start of World War I. So 100 years ago, this summer, a guy got assassinated in Bosnia, I believe it was. Franz Ferdinand got shot by a little guy.
That was after he started the band.
Yep. And that's what the fifth Hazardous Tales book is about. Fourth one, sorry.
It looks like the cover says the Donner Party.
This is the Donner Party. This is the one that came out last year.
Oh, okay.
This year, next month, the World War I one comes out. It is called Trenches, Treaties, Mud, and Blood. And because it's for kids and covers the gruesome aspects of World War I, because basically everybody who fought World War I was a man with a mustache, it was really hard to tell everybody apart. So each country is represented by a different animal. The British are bulldogs. The French are the Gallic rooster. And for those of you who know the series, you know that it's narrated by a silly hangman. He suggested that the Americans be bunnies. So keep your eyes out for Trenches, Treaties, Mud, and Blood, starring bunnies.
There's the third volume of Rust, which actually doesn't come out until May. Boom had exclusive copies shipped to this show just because this is my hometown, so you can hopefully still get copies. They had less than 20 left when I left, so copies of Volume 3 if you want to pick up Rust from them.
My current project is Rassel, kind of a hard-boiled sci-fi string theory meets Humphrey Bogart kind of a tale. And those are sold out, so you can't get them at the show anymore, I'm sorry. And I've just started an online comic called Tukey Save the Humans, which takes place 2 million years ago when the first human left Africa to try to save the species.
It's
So,
very cool. I'm reading
Oh,
it.
thank you.
It's awesome.
thank you.
My book is just came out, The Dumbest Idea from Scholastic. So my next project is a nap, and we'll see from there.
Okay, awesome. Take it away.
Okay, I'm taking it away. All right, I'm going to stand over here since they. Okay, I'm going to stand over here. You stand there. Because they freaked out when I moved the microphone. It was, whoa. Okay, so we're going to do a drawing exercise. And what we're going to do together is create our very own comic book character right here, right now, to show you that although we are all professional cartoonists who are very, very successful, really any moron can do this. So I'm going to need 3 kids to go right now to the microphone. Just go to the microphone. Go, hurry! Okay, so we're going to create a hero for our story. I need you to tell me, do you want this hero to be a boy, a girl, a space octopus, a plant, a sentient Twinkie? What do you want the character to be?
A half horse, half fairy.
A half horse, half what?
Fairy.
Oh, okay. A half horse, half fairy. You remember that. Okay, you. All right, you need to grow to reach the microphone. And then, when you grow, you tell me, what is your favorite movie, TV show, or book of all times? Amelia Rules. Wow, thank you. Oh, that is sweet. What is your favorite
My favorite book?
movie, TV show, or book?
My favorite book is probably Jeff Smith's Bone.
Aww. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Smith Jr., thank you very much. Okay.
Thanks, kid.
And you, I need you to tell me, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Lawyer.
A what? A lawyer. This has never not worked. But there's a first time for everything. So, we are going to yell because I don't have the microphone, but we are going to create our story of our horse fairy. Okay, and thank you for picking something super easy to draw. All right, so this is our horse. And she has like a crown and a flowing, wonderful mane.
And a
Okay.
wand. It needs a
And
wand.
she's on an adventure, much like, oh, and she even kind of has a nose like Bone, so that's how we'll get that in. Okay, so she is off on her way to do her fairy work. So she has in her hoof, somehow, her magic wand. Okay? And I would like to point out that the actual books I draw are drawn much, much better than this. Okay.
I've seen his books. They're not much better than that.
Jeff Smith's Bone. That tells you everything you need to know about that guy. What should I call my masterpiece? Jeff Smith's Bone. All right. Unfortunately, our fairy princess horse thing is terribly, terribly late as she runs out the door. So what is going to happen next? Here you go.
Me?
That is you.
The horse fairy is late running out the door. This has never not worked before.
It's never not worked for me, but I usually work alone.
When the horse fairy is facing a terrible
No time for
You're
shading.
right, it
no
is
time for
terrible.
shading.
terrible, imposing bad guy. We don't know who that is.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna crosshatch. I'm gonna
Crosshatch.
I'm gonna add some color.
We should stress that meeting deadlines is super important.
If wings make a fairy, right? Do wings and then... So wasn't he late for something?
It was late for something, and she runs into this horrible, imposing shadow figure. And then what happens is...
Pass the pen.
Okay, I'm gonna be a disruptor.
Uh-oh.
Oh, because it was going so well up to this point.
Quentin Tarantino is one of my favorites.
Meanwhile,
I don't know, a lot can happen between two panels, right?
That's right.
We are running out of time, so No, we're out of time? We are out of time.
Oh, okay, well,
Oh.
No.
Yeah, someone just yelled no.
So thank you, everyone.
very easy.
Oh, no, wait. Yeah. No. Fairy horse meat. You can't stop
you can do a lot of comics, you know?
So thank you very much. Thank you for having us. Very lovely. I'm sorry you didn't have time for questions, but you can always find us somewhere here if you want some free.
There's free
resources.
posters for anyone who wants one from Scholastic.
Hello.
You okay?
I have to run all the way back.
Big
I
fan.
should have painted while everyone was talking.
Bye.
Expecting like the most high-tech new
I tried to use like, actually I had like the nicest ones, but
excellent.
Probably because he's here in town.
Excellent.
yeah,
I just use it all the time.
yeah. Yeah, if you just Google my name and then go to boldcity.com and I have a booking agent and she's the one to talk to.
I will.
It's not on, anyways.
No, Kibiushi. That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
Oh, excellent. That was fun. This book is about Nathan Hale, the spy, Revolutionary War. Second book, he ends up being the narrator for all the series. Second book's about the Monitor and the Merrimack. Third book's the Honor Dinner Party. Fourth book is Yes, I have.
Yes. Why don't you take one? Do you want one of the posters?
That's super
you can
intense.
go to my site, Bold City.
Mine.
But Nancy's
To make it kind of a readable event.
Newer questions. Do you realize all the questions?
Not a whole lot of abstract thought about American history. It's just
Oh, okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, what's that?
right.
Would I sign it for my series?
Yeah. That's an amazing book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that was kind of interesting way to set them up for it.
I don't think there are
I'll have to look closer at that because I actually didn't pick up on that.
Are there mints?
Yeah.
I don't have a booth on this floor right now. My books are available here, there, and everywhere. Amazon, store. But,
Oh, nice.
You were great.
You know, I have them signing books out here, and there are kids coming, and they've got the little ones, and they are filthy, beat up. They're almost like the covers are like soft because they're so smashed up.
just super
It's
great,
real
especially
fun.
for high school readers.
Oh, thank you. What's your name? Paulette Jack. All right. Have fun.
Get off. Thank you.
Well, that went very well. I think that went very well. Oh, we have to lie like
Yeah, I know. I love it.
Yeah.
It was great. Thank you so much.
That's really, you pulled off the end of that.
Yeah, you were.
We're out of time.
That was.
Pulled it off.
That was. Thank you. Oh, and I'm sorry that you read. I sort of like didn't know how to integrate it. And
That was hysterical.
I had like 7 questions. We got through like 2 or 3. And you guys were great.
We can put it right here, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who's Gus? Who's Tommy?
Ryan,
No, I won't do that. That's really fast.
I'll go right here. Tom will go there. Yeah. See, we separated ourselves now. Okay.
Here he is.
Oh.
Did you win your tournament?
Did you get in for any of this?
Yes, he did.
Oh, you did? Oh, good. Okay. Awesome. I'm glad it worked out. So that's not good.
Yeah, it's all charged.
Up front. Yeah.
I have gifts.
Absolutely. And thank you.
Tom. 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 There you go.
Oh, thanks.
You can leave.
This one's different from the ones I got before.
Okay. Cool.
Now.
Okay, yeah.
Find your headphones out.
Set up. Hello.